Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Cutting Edge Figure Skating Podcast. My name is Kim Dunaway, and in this episode, I will be covering European Figure Skating Championships 2025. But before I talk about the results from Europeans, I wanted to talk about a couple of tragedies that really rocked the skating world just a few short days ago. The first being the loss of life aboard Flight 5342 when a helicopter hit the flight 2,400 feet, a half a mile from landing. And that flight was from Wichita. And unfortunately, there were 28 members of the figure skating community that were aboard that flight. 11 skaters, 4 coaches, and 13 family members were killed in that crash, along with, of course, non-skating community members on that flight, as well as the skating crew as well. And the skaters that were lost were all young skaters who were attending a development camp after nationals, which made it even more heartbreaking. Also included were Maxim Naumov's parents, Evgenia Shishkova and Vadim Naumov. And I have fond memories of those two because if you listen to the podcast, you know that I'm a huge pairs fan. And one of my favorite world championships is the 93 Worlds because my favorite pair skaters at the time were Isabelle Brasseur and Lloyd Eisler. And that was the year that they won. And Maxim's parents were third at that particular Worlds. And then in 94, I was rooting for Brasseur and Eisler yet again. They had held off the Russians. Well, those Russians, obviously they lost to Gordiev and Grinkov and Mishkadinov and Dmitriev at the Olympics to win bronze for a second Olympics in a row after losing to 2 Russians at the 92 Olympics, Mishkadinov and Dmitriev winning the gold at that Olympics, and then Bechky and Petrov. And Shishkova and Naumov were 5th at the 92 Olympics and 4th at the 94 Olympics. They were heavily impacted, obviously, by Gordiev and Grinkov coming back. And I was rooting for Brasseur and Eisler again at the 94 Worlds, but they were beaten by Shishkova and Naumov. And I have to say, for years, I did not like the Die Fledermaus music that they use in that free skate, which sounds so awful. Now, I really adore that music now. And they were a lovely pair at the time, but I was a big Brasseur and Eisler fan. But I do remember them very fondly, and they also medaled again. They got bronze in 95. They were a really good Russian pair, and they were just part of it, just such a long line of really good Russian pairs. And I cannot imagine what Maxim is going through right now. I had a rough January as well in terms of losing people. One of my employees was murdered earlier in the month, and my father-in-law had a heart attack the day before the crash and died. And even with those losses very close to me, it was not my mom or my daughter that was murdered, and it wasn't my dad or my husband that had a heart attack. So I can't imagine what a lot of these families are going through right now. And so I just want to have a moment of silence on the podcast for all of those lives that were lost in that plane crash, both the members of the figure skating community and those that were not. Thank you. And then I also have to talk about Dick Button, who we also lost in that very same week at the age of 95. Long life he had. And someone who grew up in the 90s listening to figure skating, you, of course, listened to Dick Button and Peggy Fleming. Now, you had Scott Hamilton and Sandra Bessick during the Olympics, and I was too young at the time to have had Dick Button for the Olympic coverage back when ABC had it. It was always CBS until NBC got the rights. But Dick Button and Peggy Fleming were my favorite and will probably always be my favorite duo covering figure skating. And I just have such great memories of Dick Button, the way that he would get enthusiastic for a really great skate. Like I think about Sasha Cohen's like debut nationals with that short program, the 4 seasons. He just absolutely loved that program. He never ever loved like that catch foot spin that she would do at the end of her programs. There were certain spirals that he never cared for, and he would let you know about it. But I love that enthusiasm. I also think about that enthusiasm that he had when Michelle had that amazing performance at the Atlanta Nationals in 2004 when she did Tosca. And you could just feel the emotion in Dick's voice when she like did that last step sequence and the emotion that she poured into that. He just had so much passion for the sport. And I always, always missed him in the booth so much. And it brought me to tears when, after Nathan won the Olympics 3 years ago, that they had all of those Olympic winners in this video. And the last one was Dick Button. And he, of course, was much older and obviously not in this best of health. But just to see him and congratulating Nathan, it just brought tears to my eyes. It brings tears to my eyes now because it's just such, obviously I wasn't around as a lot of us weren't around to see Dick Button skate, but I just appreciated his commentary and love for the sport just so, so much. So I just also wanted to mention losing him, that loss to the figure skating community as well. And there's no easy way to transition from those losses to Europeans, which they held a moment of silence. And it was obviously very heavy for a lot of the skaters here. And you can imagine at Boston Worlds in a little over a month, it's definitely going to be very heavy because there were multiple skaters that were part of the Skating Club of Boston. And of course, Worlds will be held in Boston. And I imagine that they're going to have a lot of things for the Skating Club of Boston just to remember those lives that were lost. There also are lots of different fundraisers going on as well, too. I did want to read this that U.S. Figure Skating put out just this Wednesday about a skating show that's going to be in March. Legacy on Ice benefit at Capital One Arena to support victims of the tragedy at Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport. So it'll be co-hosted by Olympic champion Brian Boitano, and it will feature several skating stars. So the list right now is Ilya Malinin, Amber Glenn, Madison Chalk and Evan Bates, Alyssa Liu. Tara Lipinski is listed. Is she going to be skating or is she just going to be hosting the event? Not sure. Christy Yamaguchi, Scott Hamilton, Johnny Weir, and they said many more to be announced. It says Legacy on Ice is a powerful tribute to those lost, including members of the U.S. figure skating community. This extraordinary evening will unite the sport's greatest legends and rising stars in a breathtaking showcase of artistry, athleticism, and remembrance. So again, this event will be held March the 2nd at Capital One Arena in downtown Washington, D.C. And I will put in the show notes the information to get more details on that particular event. All right, now to the results at Europeans, and this will be a bit truncated. For one thing, this is like a week behind my usual schedule due to obviously the unfortunate circumstances in my personal life in this past week. So it will not be as in-depth as my podcasts and recaps usually are, and I should be back to my normal self at Four Continents. Let's talk about the men for starters. This event was wild. So this was an event I did not get to watch live at all. I had like my earbud in as I was in the car driving, listening to some of the earlier groups. And so I heard Lucas's skate. But of course, he was eighth going into the free skate. And then I heard Alexander Solevko's, and then I didn't hear any of the final group. So when I got out of my coffee shop meeting before heading to my mother-in-law's to meet with some family, I looked at the results and I was like, what in the world just happened? I couldn't wait to go back and watch it. Just absolute craziness, meaning in the absolute most way. And I feel like we haven't gotten just a whole lot of craziness in the ordinals with the men's events this year, and they made up for it here. So the winner here was Lucas Bridgke of Switzerland, and really making up for the disappointment last year where he came in as after getting a second place in the short program last year and just really had his worst free skate of the whole season, really to end up fifth. I was so bummed for him. So for him to come back and win here was awesome. And even though he was eighth going into the free skate, like they were all really, really bunched up there between like third and eighth. So it was definitely not crazy for him to make the podium. Maybe a little bit crazier for him to go on and win, but his free skate was just so good. He landed both of his quad toes, which have really been pesky for him all season. He had an injury in the fall and was just never really at the top of his game. He lost a lot of training time. And obviously, he has had some time to sort of heal everything and get everything together at this for this free skate, especially. I thought his second quad toe was even better than the first quad toe that he did in combination. Literally the only issue that he had on a jump the entire program was his final jump, which was a triple flip, and he turned out of it. He got like a level 3 on a spin. Everything else was just brilliant. I loved the music. I love a program that ends with a good choreography sequence, and it's actually not choreography. It actually is choreography, not just like an Ina Bauer or a knee slide. The crowd went totally wild when he was done, and his tech score ended up being 98. So I talked about that in the fall a lot. We hadn't seen a lot of men get that 100 plus tech score. It was really like Daniel Grassel and Yuma and Ilya. Shun maybe hit it one time, but here's Lucas like hovering right on that as well, which is fantastic really for him. And like I said, there were just a couple places that he could actually do a little bit better and hit that 100 mark. So I was super excited for him. Big surprise, I felt like, in second place, and that was Nikolai Mimola. If you would have asked me who would have been the highest finishing Italian man, I probably would have said either Grassel or Matteo over Nikolai, just because Nikolai has just not been very consistent. I mean, last year at Europeans, we had Matteo get bronze, I think, and then Frangipani was fourth, and Mimola was the third finishing Italian man, and here he was the highest finishing Italian man. I mean, the distance that he covered on his quadlets triple toe was really, really fantastic. He had a few calls in the last 90 seconds of his program, and that was the difference between him having a silver medal and actually had the opportunity to win here. He got a Q call on his triple flip. His flying sit spin only got a level 1. His step sequence only got a level 2. So his tech score went from 101 to 97, and he lost by 4.39 points. So just little things here and there ultimately cost him the title, but I don't think anybody was really focused on that. I think getting a silver for him was a fantastic result for him. And also he either meant to or didn't mean to kind of throw some shade to Daniel Grassel in some of his post-competition press. He was talking about other Italian skaters, and he didn't mention Daniel Grassel, which I thought was interesting, but thought he also didn't mention Frangipani either. So I'm thinking it was just maybe an oversight, but I'm just going to throw that out there because I saw it and I was like, okay. In third place was Adamsio Himfa of France, and he came in as the favorite, but also kind of as a wild card because he obviously has been injured. We did not see him at Grand Prix final. He had to withdraw. He wasn't at his best in the Grand Prix. He had, that weird France where he came all the way back from like 8th or 9th place to win the whole thing. Then he was third in his second Grand Prix. And he came here with lower tech content than what we have seen him do, which is perfectly fine. Like, Adam doesn't need to do quad lutzes to win at Europeans. He did need to skate cleaner than what he skated here, which is why he was third. But even so, I think that he seemed, hopefully, not to be in any pain. It was definitely the quad lutz that was more of an issue for him with that ankle injury in the fall. And so we didn't see him do that here. Is that something that he's going to be able to add back for Worlds? Not really sure at this point. He went back to the SOS short program, which I do think is the better short program of the two. And I mentioned that on the podcast. He also took the backflip out of the short program, and it looked a whole lot better. It made no sense really before. And then in the free skate, he had a little bit different costume than what he's been wearing earlier in the season. Like, the other one looked bulkier, kind of like almost like a bad Batman outfit a little bit. Makes me think of that line in The Dark Knight when he's like, I'm not wearing hockey pads, and he kind of looked like he was wearing hockey pads. But this one I think is much better. But it's like right off the bat, he wasn't quite there. He fell on his quad toe. I just don't feel like this Dune program has ever really completely come together. I've seen a lot of people complain about the space in the middle where he kind of dies on the ice, and they feel like the whole program kind of slows down. And I'm honestly kind of on the fence about it. Like, I don't know. I don't think it's that particular piece of choreography that's the problem, but there's just something in this program that for me is just not come all the way together so far this season. But he does make it onto the podium. In fourth place was Nika Agazzi, and he came in after a very strong short program in second place, and just mistake after mistake in the free skate. And you could really see on his face that he knows that he just really missed a good opportunity to get on the podium here. And unfortunate for him. Fifth place was Matteo Rizzo, coming off of 2 European medals back to back, was not able to find that same form at this event yet again. He just had a tough time with the quads in both of his programs. He came in with a new free skate, so he had been using fixed shoe for 2 seasons. I think part of that was just with the hip surgery that he had after Europeans last year. Just probably didn't have the training time to really train new programs. And so he came in with a new opera free skate. It's not really all the way there yet. I'm imagining that he's going to keep it for next season as well. I think it could be potentially very good, but here it just didn't quite come together. Plus all the technical mistakes kept him from being a podium contender here. And sixth place was Denis Vasilyev, who was like the absolute definition of minning. He was 12th after the short program, because what does he do? He comes out in the short program and does that stupid quad salchow again. And I've said this so many times. I don't have a problem with Dennis doing a quad salchow in his free skate. Take your risk in the free skate. Don't take the risk in the short program with the jump that you do not land, like, hardly ever. And of course, he wiped out on it and he ended up in 12th. Now he comes out in the free skate. He lands not 1, but 2. Now they both got called. One got a Q and the second one got an undercall, but he stayed on his feet, which I'm very, very happy for. Take your risk in the free skate. Just like, why? I mean, if he had come out and done a better short program, like if he had not attempted the quad salchow and just gone and done a clean short with the performance that he had in the free skate, now we're getting closer to a potential podium spot. But instead, the wipeout just totally takes him out of that conversation. But he does salvage himself a top 6 finish here. The free skate was really, really good. I mean, artistically speaking, it was really good. All 4 of his Ultra C elements got calls. So I mentioned the 2 calls on the quads. Both his triple axles also got calls as well. He also got a level 2 in a step sequence and a level 2 in his combo spin. Like, Dennis, come on, man. You could do this. Like, he started off with an 89.96 at the end of his routine, the end of his program. And then his final tech score was 77.99. So he lost 12 points due to calls. So you add that 12 points onto his score, and again, he's very, very close to a third place had he had a much better short program. The other people that I'll just mention, just kind of briefly, the two hometown guys, Mikhail Salevko and Alexander Salevko. Mikhail had a really good short program and was in that final group. Just had a tougher free skate. Wasn't a disaster, but unfortunately wasn't able to get on the podium for the hometown fans. Daniel Grassel was 8th here, and he came in really as one of the favorites for a medal because he's had a very successful fall. But then he ran into a tough tech caller by the name of Shin Amano. He was one of the 3 members of the technical committee at this competition, and it showed. For instance, he had just a very interesting free skate. He had a quad loop he couldn't get all the way around. Did his triple axel, triple toe. He had a long, long wait for those scores, which you know is never a good sign. His tech score went from 92.5 to 81.87. Every single jumping pass, except for his triple loop, triple toe, got a call. He got an unclear edge on his quad lutz. He got a full downgrade on the quad loop. Got a Q call on his quad salchow. And one of his triple axles, he got an under on another triple axle, and he got an unclear edge on his triple lutz. So he has gotten over 100 points, as I mentioned earlier this season, but not today. So a lot of people have been asking for that to happen, and they got their wish at this competition. The last person I'm going to mention briefly is Kevin, who we got bad Kevin yet again. And he was 18th after the short program. And then in his free skate, sometimes I don't understand why Kevin, if you've already had a rough short program, why not just kind of come out in the free skate and just kind of take the quads out, just do triples and just skate clean. Why not? Instead, he goes out, has a hard fall right off the top on a quad toe. Then he pops his next quad toe. He fell on both of his triple axles. He did a single flip at one point. I mean, the skating itself was beautiful, but the jumps were just awful. I mean, he just needs a plan B. If it's not working, okay, we're going to abort ship and we're going to do this instead. He ended up 22nd here. And Kevin has never medaled at Europeans. He's gotten close. And then times like this, he has been so far from the podium. It was why is he even here? I don't know what we're going to see at Worlds. I don't know if he's going to withdraw from Worlds like he did last year. But I feel like we're right back in the same boat that we were last year with Kevin. If you hear something in the background, that is my cat who is desperately trying to get into the podcast. All right, let us move on to dance, which was also a little spicy. And the winners here were Guinard and Fabri of Italy. And coming into this event, they really needed a good competition because it has not been the best season for them. They've gotten a lot of talk, a lot of negative talk about their program selection, really both programs this season. I have been a bigger fan of the free dance than I have of the rhythm dance, but most people haven't been super fond of the robot free dance. I said on the Grand Prix Final podcast that I thought that they would come back here to Europeans with last year's free dance. Just because even when they have done the robot free dance well, it didn't score well. It didn't score well in the one Grand Prix where they didn't have the big fall, and it didn't score well at Grand Prix Final, and it just felt like Fear and Gibson were really hot on their tails, and I just thought they might go to something safer. Ultimately, I'm glad they stuck with their guns. They stick with the robots. It worked for them here. Both segments of the competition, they won, and the other teams, specifically Fear and Gibson, weren't able to really push them at this event like I was sort of expecting. And so they were able to come out and really sort of establish themselves as, team numero uno coming from the European continent and look, like they can definitely medal again at Worlds. I wouldn't say they're out of the woods quite yet, but I think this was definitely a positive step in the direction for them that they desperately, desperately needed. Second place here was definitely a surprise, and that was Lopareva and Bruzo. Not because they haven't had a fantastic season, and they have, just because it was hard to envision any other top two outside of Baron Gibson and Gwinnard and Fabry. But Lopareva and Bruzo came out and were able to capitalize on little mistakes that Baron Gibson made and won their silver medal here, which was fantastic. They had a new personal best in their rhythm dance. Their free dance was really strong. Really, all three of the teams, like them, Turkula versus Lewis, and Baron Gibson, I mean, were just separated by a whisper in that free dance. And it was really just kind of the where they all stood after the rhythm dance that ended up deciding their fate. Lopareva and Bruzo finished fourth in the free dance, but again, they were all separated by such a small margin. It was less than a half of a point. So they were able to maintain their second place. And they also got a personal best in their free dance as well, which has been a standout just really all season. In third place was Baron Gibson. And the very first element that they had in that rhythm dance was their twizzles, and hers were just not strong. And that really was the difference between Baron Gibson being second here, as they probably would have been, or potentially trying to push Gwinnard and Fabry. And honestly, you could have made a really good argument for Baron Gibson being fourth here, as I don't know. For me, I could have tossed a coin between them and Turkula and Verse Lewis, who were fourth, just because Fear and Gibson were stronger when it came to levels than Turkula and Verse Lewis was, even though I definitely preferred Turkula and Verse Lewis's programs, both in the rhythm dance and in the free dance, over what Fear and Gibson sort of brought to the table. I thought the rhythm dance for Julia and Matthias was so strong, and getting an 81 for them was huge, because we really have not seen them score that in some time. They capable of it, but they've been sort of stuck in this like 77, 78 range for some time, which has kept them from being able to push the Fear and Gibsons of the world. So that was really awesome for them. I would have loved to have seen them come in third. And just make Fear and Gibson work just a little bit harder. Their free dance, however, I thought was just stunning. Talking about Turkula and Verse Lewis. Their free dance is one of my favorite free dances of the season. I just love so many of the touches that they do in this program. And like I said, if I'm picking the program that I prefer, it would have been them. But when you look at their levels, still not as strong as Fear and Gibson. And ultimately, that's what cost them the bronze here. And they were separated just by like a half of a point. And it just kind of sucked, honestly, because you feel like if they're so close, you kind of would have liked to have seen the Finns take it over the Brits, but it did not happen. That was the top four. In fifth place was Olivia Smart and Tim Deek of Spain. And they had another really strong outing with the Dune program, but they were quite a bit behind in the rhythm dance. They still continue to do better and better in that rhythm dance. They got a personal best there, but they were still like 5 points behind where everybody else was. And so it was just way too much ground for them to try to make up in that free dance. But still, coming from seventh to fifth here, really good showing for them. In sixth place was Reed and Ambrula Vicious. They were fifth in the rhythm dance, but fell to seventh in the free dance. I have liked the puppet free dance when I've seen it the other couple of times this season. It just didn't, for me, this time was not as strong as the previous two times that I've seen it. And it should be the other way around. Just not as clean. Just, I don't know. The commitment doesn't seem to be all the way there throughout the entire 4 minutes of the program. I don't know that this program is really ever going to come together at this point. They did just compete at the Egna Dance Trophy, where they did win, but again, their scores weren't fantastic there either. So maybe this program was a bit of a miss for them. I don't know. And I just feel like their rhythm dance just, for me, is the real program that kind of drags them down this season. I feel like that one doesn't really come together either. It just feels like they like they just started the season really late. Like they needed some challengers or something to sort of get these programs going a little bit more. It just hasn't happened for them really this season. The other team I'll talk about is the seventh place team, and that was Orihara and Pyridin. And they had a personal best in the rhythm dance. It was so nice to see them get over 75 points because they have really, they've done fantastic in the free dance the last couple of seasons. They've been able to move up in the standings with the free dance. The problem for them is they've been so low in the rhythm dance because they haven't gotten great levels, but they've clearly worked on some of those things and got the best scores of their career in the rhythm dance here. And it was so fantastic to see. They were eighth in the rhythm dance and they still had a super strong free dance. They finished sixth and were able to move up to seventh. Eighth was Davis and Smolkin, who seemed to just kind of be going a little bit in the wrong direction. Like they just kind of shot out of a cannon at Skate America in what was a definitely weaker field, being third after the rhythm dance there, obviously not making it onto the podium, but feeling like they were going to be more impactful this season than what they have been. Wasn't a particular issue with either of their performances really here. Other teams were just better. But as we have seen from some of the teams that have gone to Ice Academy of Montreal, it's really been that second season when we've really started to see a turnaround. So we'll see if next season is the season that they're really able to start to improve a lot more. In ninth place was Desmauget and Le Mercier, also of France. And they had new costumes in their rhythm dance, which I thought was a little bit of an improvement. I didn't understand like the whole like mock tie suit situation that they were doing earlier in the season. But this dress was just so impractical. For Luisia, it was like riding up the whole time. So it still wasn't a great costume choice overall. But this was their best score of the season. It was a good performance for them. The free dance, however, just is another program, kind of like I just don't feel like ever really comes together. Like the music is weird. I think they're brilliant. I just think this program does not work for them. And the judges don't seem to either because they were sixth after the rhythm dance, but only 10th in the free dance to fall to ninth, which was really unfortunate. In 10th place was the Tashlers, and they had one of the best free dances of the day. I mean, it was a day of just some really strong free dances. But because the Tashlers were in 11th after the rhythm dance, basically like their pattern step, I think got like a level 1, put them way down. And so of course they're not going to get the marks when they're skating in the second group, right? Which is stupid, but that's how it is. But I thought their free dance was the best that it has been this entire season. Like I haven't been a super big fan of it. I'm a fan of them, but this free dance I haven't been a super big fan of this season. But this was by far and away the most that I have enjoyed this free dance. I thought it was really strong, and the marks were like at least 5 points too low. And then the other team I'll talk about in 12th place is the Mirazcheks, and they had to change their free dance music. So they were skating to some piece of music from some artist who decided that they didn't want them to skate to their music unless they paid them money. Now, do you think was he offended that they picked the music? Did he not like their routine to the music, or did he actually think that asking for some large volume of money for them to skate to it was going to result in him getting said money? Like I don't get it. It's unfortunate because all of the skaters this year had to use a clearinghouse to clear their music beforehand, but obviously that was not 100% foolproof. So they ended up having to change the music. So they changed it to Rain in My Black Eyes, which of course we've heard a million times. It was a little bit different arrangement than what we've heard some other teams use. Just like I'm not like a music aficionado, but like, I don't know, synthesizer, something else was in there, right? To make it sound a little bit different. I really liked this program. I liked it. I felt like better than I liked their original free dance, actually. And so I thought it was really strong here too. Unfortunately, they were stuck in 12th place in both of the competition and both segments of the competition, largely because in the rhythm dance had a problem with his twizzle. But I really enjoyed the free dance. I also want to give a couple of shout outs. One to Manny and Roethlisberger down in 15th, and they're skating to Titanic. He's dressed as Jack, she's dressed as Rose. Just some things I really love in this program other than just the music. I mean, there's this like Hydra Blade move that they do with her in the full splits. They have this rotational lift that works really well with like a crescendo in the music. I think the last minute of the program is just really good. Love that. And also like Laguage and Kafa, who are the third French team here. This was their first year at Europeans. I just continue to see a lot of improvement from this team. I thought they really did a good job in their rhythm dance of just like capturing the vibe of the 70s. Enjoyed really both of their programs. Becker and Hernandez, the other British team, they were 13th here. Apparently, he had food poisoning. So he powered through it, didn't drop his partner, didn't love the music choices that they had in their rhythm dance. I liked their free dance better. And then, boy, Caroline Suisse and Shane Ferris of Ireland in 18th place have just really struggled since they have changed countries. And I thought last season that their free dance was decent. I thought that the rhythm dance was interesting. This season, I don't know. Nothing just feels like it's working for this team. Like in the rhythm dance, like her twizzles were definitely like a problem, but the camera angle was so bad that you couldn't really see what the issue was. But the program is just missing something, and it feels a little frantic. And I don't know. I don't know what's up with this team, but I just haven't really enjoyed any of their, I can't say any of their programs because I did like their free dance last year, but I feel like 3 of the 4 programs I just have question marks about. And then this year I feel like is a step back even from last year, and they should be going in a more positive direction. And, last year at Europeans, they were 13th, and this year they're 18th, and it just worries me. Okay, talked about ice dance probably more than I should have, but as much as I wanted to. How about that? All right, let's move on to the ladies. And this was a real feel-good moment, right? Nina Petrokina winning here at home in Estonia was such a moment. Going to talk about the women a little bit different than I typically talk about them because they were all bunched up together so much in the short program. Gubanova won the short program, which I thought was generous because, they have been very, very quick to make calls this season. And when Gubanova did her triplets in the short program, I was shocked when it didn't come up with negative GOE because I thought, okay, that was definitely under, I thought maybe she even two-footed it. But I thought, oh, it'll come down, after they review it. And it was called clean. Interestingly enough, everybody else seemed like they got calls. So she was leading after the short program. But again, they were so close together. Like she was really close to Nina. 0.05 separated them. And then again, just like a hair behind was Kimi Rapon in third, who was my pick to win Europeans. And then you had Nina Pinzaroni right there with 66. So you felt like between that top 4, like just whoever did the best in the free skate, they were all so close together. And then you also kind of had this little mini battle with the Italian women between Anna Panzetta and Laurinaki Gutmann. So let's talk about the top 4 first. In that free skate, Nina Petrokina came out and just killed it. Killed everything. Like this Dune program has had potential all season, and every outing she's been a little bit better, and you just kind of felt like this was going to be kind of a natural progression for her. She obviously had a fantastic fall last year, and then unfortunately broke a leg. I thought it was miraculous that she even made it back to Worlds last season, and it was clear she wasn't quite all the way there in the fall season. But here, like, this is what she is capable of, and it was so great to see it in her home country. It just created such a great moment. And when that score came up of 139 points, I was like, oh, baby girl has won, because there is no way Gubanova is going to get 140 points in her free skate. Like, there's just literally no way. Now, again, Gubanova, who finishes second here, this is her third medal in a row at Europeans. This has by far and away been her best event. We never seem to get this version of her on the Grand Prix or at Worlds, but at Europeans, she's almost money, like her short program. And I do enjoy seeing Gubanova skate at her best. I pick on her a lot because she's had issues with spins and step sequences where she's always losing points, and she's always got kind of the pinch face and the kiss and cry. But she is somebody that I felt like going into this Olympic cycle was going to make a name for herself, and she's just been so inconsistent. So, but here she was again, made it on to yet another podium at Europeans. And then in third place was Nina Pinzaroni, who got hammered yet again on calls in both of her programs. But oh my gosh, were they gorgeous, especially the free skate. Like, the free skate to me is just stunning. It will absolutely be one of the top choices for season's best at the end of the season. I just think everything works. The music, the costume, the choreography. I can't remember what the story was. Like, I was like racking my brain like all weekend. I was like, what was it, a shipwreck? Like, was it like, what was the story, that they had done in lieu of The Handmaid's Tale? I can't remember. But, and also it doesn't matter. It's just such a gorgeous program. And I was really thrilled to see her get on the podium here, because she hasn't been on the podium at a major event all season. Like, I think maybe Warsaw Cup, she was on the podium. But as far as the Grand Prix, she was always just right there, but not quite. There's always also been a lot of mistakes that she's had this season. Not like super, super major mistakes, but this was the first time we've really seen her skate clean this season too. And that really just made all the difference. And I was so glad to see her make it onto the podium here. In fourth place, unfortunately, was Kimi Rapon, who came in with a big chance, not just to win, but get back on the podium here at Europeans. She was a surprise bronze medalist 2 years ago. And just really, I think the moment was just too big for her. Too much pressure in that free skate. Just made too many mistakes. And she fell from third to fourth. And in fifth place was Anna Pizzetta of Italy. And in sixth was Lori Naki-Gutmann. So let me talk about them together, because this is an interesting decision that Italy has to make as to which one of these ladies are they going to send to Worlds. So last year it was Serena Yos who went to Worlds. She was sixth at European. She was the highest finishing Italian lady. So she went to Worlds and she finished 20th. She was on the Junior Grand Prix this year, as was Anna Pizzetta. So only Lori Naki-Gutmann of those ladies was on the Senior Grand Prix. Serena Yos withdrew from Italian Nationals, I presume for an injury. Could not find exactly the reason for that, but she was not at Italian Nationals. Anna won Italian Nationals. She wins Italian Nationals, and then she comes here, and Laura Naki gets fifth after the short program ahead of Anna, and then they flip-flop in the free skate. Anna actually finishes fourth in the free skate to move ahead of Lori Naki and finish in fifth, and Lori Naki-Gutmann falls to sixth. So it looks like, Anna has the edge, right? Winning Italian Nationals and finishing ahead of Lori Naki-Gutmann here. And I certainly wouldn't blame or fault Italy for picking Anna to go. But I do feel like the Lori Naki-Gutmann has a higher upside. Which one has the lower floor? I don't know. It's a good question. Lori Naki-Gutmann was, I think, 17th at Worlds 2 years ago when she went. It's going to be tough for either one of them to finish in the top 10 to qualify a second Italian lady, which I know Italy would like to do. Now, they would still have to qualify that second spot at China at the qualifying competition, which it's going to be tough to do, right? If they were to get an Italian lady into the top 10. I just feel like Laurinaki Gutmann probably has the best ability to get in the top 10 just based upon how well she did at the Finland Grand Prix. Was it the Finland Grand Prix? Yes, the Finland Grand Prix. But I can also see them going, no, we feel more confident in Anna. It's a tough choice. Anna does have another head-to-head win over Laurinaki back from Lombardia earlier in the season when Anna was 5th and Laurinaki Gutmann was 10th. So I think that the resume probably leans in the favor of Anna. We'll see what they decide, but that's going to be an interesting decision for them. All right, let's jump over to pairs, the last event. And that was won by Minerva Fabian Hassi and Nikita Volodin. And they came in last year as the heavy favorites, did not even make the podium. And here they win both segments of the competition to finish first, which was really no surprise. I think their short program is probably the least memorable of any of the top teams. I think that Miura Ikihara have a much stronger short program. I think Danny and Ellie have a much stronger short program. I think that Meltekin and Borolava have a much more interesting short program also. Now, in terms of execution, they're fantastic. But in terms of like composition, like them and Deanna and Max, to me, are behind some of these other teams. But they go out there and they usually kill it every single time in terms of the technical elements. I find that their free skate is a much stronger vehicle of the two because they bring more emotion to it. Not that Minerva is not like just serving face in that short program, because she definitely is. But I just find, for me, the free skate to be stronger. Like that last minute of the program just gets me every single time I watch it. It's so strong. And they, to be, come in to Worlds as the favorites because they've just been cleaner and more consistent than any other pair team this season. And second place was Conti and Mashi, who continue to be very strong. I mean, they end up about 6 points behind them here. I thought they probably could have been a little bit closer than that. They were pretty close in the free skate, but Hassi and Volodin had a really big issue on their 3-jump combination. Both teams were not clean on their 3-jump combinations, but Sarah and Nicolo definitely had a much smaller error in theirs versus Minerva, who really struggled on 2 of the jumps in their combination. With Conti and Mashi, their short program, you did them in. She turned out pretty severely on their throw triple loop, and everything else in there was good, but that was really the difference between these two teams at the end of the day. I just thought the 6-point margin maybe was a little heavy for me. In third place was Meltikina and Borolava of Georgia, and they quite the jump to get onto the podium here. In the short program, she showed up with a whole lot of tape on both of her shoulders. Apparently, she dislocated one of her shoulders in the off season, and she's had tape on it a lot, but not as much as she had here. It was kind of concerning. And then in the short program, she fell in the triple sow, but the actual bigger problem was their death spiral. So initially, I thought her position was that she was too high. It was very high on it, but I had a couple people tell me via social media that it was his pivot foot. So I kept like rewinding it, watching it, and finally it was like before they really get into the death spiral position that he slips, and that's the issue. And so they lost that element completely, and so that put them in 9th place. And they had a big free skate to come all the way from 9th to finish 3rd. So again, I've been saying this team is scary. They can score a lot of points, and here they are on a podium yet again. They were on the podium at Grand Prix Final, on the podium here. The Worlds probably going to need a better short program than what they had here, but they probably won't make that same mistake again. In 4th place was Pavlova and Shevchenko of Hungary. They have been just not at their best, I feel like, really all season. It's just been a mistake here, a mistake there, just uncharacteristic. In the short program, she put a hand down on their throw triple flip, and then in the free skate, she fell on it. And that was enough to drop them from third, where they were after the short program, to off the podium. They were incredibly disappointed. It was less than half a point that separated them and Meltikina and Buralaba. So they will not repeat as European medalists. And they'll have another opportunity at Worlds. Obviously, I don't see it just because I feel like we're going to get kind of the same thing we've seen from them all season, which is kind of like a mistake somewhere. And hopefully next season we'll see them sharper than what they have been most of this season. It hasn't been like a complete disaster. I mean, they did medal at one of their Grand Prix. They did medal at, I think, Nebelhorn, but ultimately it's just been disappointing from what we kind of what I expected of them coming into this season. In fifth place was Anastasia Vaughn-Law and Luke Digby. Incredible finish for them. They actually were fourth after the short program, so they got to be in the final group. In their short program, that throw triple sow they did looked so easy. Like they could do a quad sow if she wanted to. I feel like she does such a good job of emoting in the step sequence. Both of their programs are really fantastic, but the short program really showed them off really well here. Unfortunately, they had a fall in practice on a lift. She was on the ice for some time, but she ended up getting up and continuing on with practice, including doing that same lift again. But they just seemed to be just a little bit off in their free skate. They still had a good free skate for them, but it definitely could have been a little bit stronger. But overall, fifth place here was just like fantastic result for them. Sixth place was Gilardi and Ambrosini, and they were coming off of, two medal winning performances at the previous two European championships. But unlike Anastasia Gubanova, weren't able to find the magic that they've had here the past two seasons. And I really feel like all season, it's just been a struggle. I know they worked on her triple sow a lot in the off season. Unfortunately, we just really haven't been able to see that in the competition setting. In the short program, she affected both segments of the competition. She just really struggled with her double axels here, and so she did a single axel in the short program. You get no credit for that. You've got to do a double jump in pairs at least. And so that was a big issue for them, and that put them in sixth after the short program. She also had a hand down on the triplets too, and to me it's just a shame because they have so many great touches in the choreography, like where she does this flip over his back after their step sequence, but unfortunately those technical mistakes just sort of negate even those good qualities that they have. And then in the free skate, I just don't feel like this Dracula program has ever like recaptured the magic that it had for them last season. And again, struggled on the double axel. She doubled on the triple Salchow. He fell on his triple Salchow. And so, the other elements of their program were good. The throws were good, but those two mistakes just right off the top at the beginning were just really unfortunate. And they just were not able to get out of that sixth spot that they were in. In seventh place here was Chechnina and Wozniak of Poland, and they had a fantastic result. Really for them, they have been a team that are on a rise. They came off of a big win at Golden Spin where they got the best scores of their career. Really like their short program. The music helps it a lot. The Florence and the Machine. They had a couple of minor errors, his triple toe and their death spiral, but overall, I think any like 60 point or better score for them is good. I think the next threshold for them is going to be getting to that like 65 mark and being more consistent with their side-by-side jumping elements, especially in their free skate. Not what they got like at Golden Spin, not as strong as it was there. And I think for them, the next goal is going to be to try to get to that 120 mark consistently. But they're definitely a team that's really trending in the right direction. I'm seeing a lot of positive growth from where we saw them last season. And I think next season they could, potentially even threaten to medal at some Grand Prix. So we'll see. Eighth place was Honk and Kukul, and they just... unfortunate for them. Like usually the issue is in Annika's triple sow, and she landed the triple sow in the short program. I'm like, okay, yes. And then she put her hand out on the throw, which is usually a good element for them. And the free skate just really had some issues there on her triple Salchow. She wasn't able to land it there. They had really nice lifts in the air, but on the exits were shaky on one of them, and then another one was a big issue and just not their best skate. This program has just been kind of a miss for me all season. Just the music choices to me just don't mesh well, and so the program to me feels like it's fighting. Like the first half and the second half to me are just kind of fighting each other. And so they were really bummed not to duplicate some of the success that they have had in the past here also. All right. And I'll just briefly mention the Kovalevs just because they did get some new costumes in their short program. They're still not great, but it was an upgrade over the lime green that they normally had. I thought that their short program was like a better effort than usual for them. Like I thought the step sequence was pretty good. I thought the lift was actually pretty good. I thought they had some nice positions in there and some good distance on that lift. So I just wanted to give them a little shout out because at times I give them the blues a bit as well. So I thought this was one of their better outings of the season. All right, so that completes my coverage, albeit late. Apologize for that, of Europeans. So I must pick out some standouts for my Pam Chinko award. So in the men, got to go with Lucas's free skate. It was so good. I'll give an honorable mention to Dennis's free skate, which was also really an incredible skate for him as well. In the dance event, I would give it to Turkula and Verse Lewis for their free dance, and also Orihara and Pirinen for their rhythm dance. I haven't liked a lot of rhythm dances this season, but to see them get 75 was a great benchmark for them, and they were really, really strong in it. In the ladies, it's got to go to Nina Petrakina for her free skate, but I'm also going to give one to Nina Pinzaroni also for her free skate, which was also really, really strong. And then in the pairs event, I really thought Conti and Mashi's free skate was really strong. I mean, that program I thought was so boring earlier in the season, but it has really come a long way. I also thought, Meltik and Umbrella had a really big jump and their free skate also. But I think I'm going to give it to Anastasia and Luke for their short program. Just really strong, getting in that final group. They're going to get my Pam Chinko award for Europeans. All right. Thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast. You can let me know what some of the performances were that were some of your favorites. We've got a couple weeks here between now and Four Continents. So ordinarily this is where I would preview Four Continents, but I'm just going to say that, I'm hoping for a hotly contested matchup between Chalk and Bates and Gillis and Poirier. I'm hoping for a hotly contested matchup in pairs between Deanna and Max and Miura and Kihara. Men's, I just want to see Junhwa Cha skate well and Cal Miura skate well. That would just make me so happy. And then with the women, I would love to see the Canadian ladies show up and show out. And I would also like to see the American ladies do well as well. All right. You can find me on all the socials at Ice Skate Podcast. Hope you have a good rest of your week, and I'll be back soon.